Hey, Shalom, guys. Welcome to another episode of Messiah and the Feast. Today, we're going to be talking about the Omer right here, right? So, this is found in Leviticus chapter 23, verses 9 through 14, and this is what it says. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, When you enter the land which I am going to give to you, and you gather its harvest, then you shall bring in the sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest. He shall wave the sheaf before the Lord for you to be accepted. On the day after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. Now, on the day when you wave the sheaf, you shall offer a male lamb 1 year old without defect as a burnt offering to the Lord. Its grain offering shall be 2/10 of the ephah of the fine flour mixed with oil, an offering by fire to the Lord for a soothing aroma. With its drink offering, a fourth of a hin of wine. Until this very day, until you have brought in the offering of your God, you shall eat neither bread nor roasted grain nor new produce. It is a permanent statute throughout your generations in all of your dwellings. Now, the next appointment on the biblical calendar actually begins during the 7th day of Passovers. The Torah commands the priesthood to offer the sheaf of the first fruits of the barley harvest in the temple on the day after the Sabbath. Bible teachers sometimes refer to this minor festival as the festival of first fruits, but in Messianic Judaism, we refer to it as the first day of the Omer. And Omer is a biblical unit of measure that indicates about one sheaf's worth of grain. As it says in Leviticus 23:10, you shall bring in the Omer of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest. The Torah prohibited using or eating any grain or produce from the crops of the new year until the priests had offered an Omer of barley in the temple on the day after the Sabbath. Quote, he shall wave the Omer before the Lord for you to be accepted. On the day after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. Leviticus 23:11. On the same day, Cephas and his associates tried the master. 3 apostles from the Sanhedrin went out to a barley field not far from Jerusalem. On the same day that the Romans bound and crucified the master, the apostles from the Sanhedrin bound up the standing barley into bundles while it was still attached to the ground, so that it would be easier to reap. On the 2nd day of Passover, they returned to the barley field after the conclusion of the first day of Passover. The reapers collected 3 seahs of barley in their baskets and carried it back to Jerusalem that same night. Now, that same night, the priests in the temple threshed, roasted, and grounded the barley into flour. All night they prepared, the same night that our master Yeshua left the tomb. The priests refined the freshly milled flour by sifting it through 13 sheaves. Sunday morning, while the women discovered that the tomb was empty, the high priests were busy mixing the barley flour with oil and frankincense to prepare it as a bread offering. The priests mixed the flour into the dough with olive oil and incense. Cephas took the batch of dough in hand and waved it before the Lord as a wave offering. Then he touched the barley flour to the corner of the altar. The high priest concluded the ceremony by sacrificing a single male lamb as a burnt offering to accompany the offering of new grain. The day began the 50-day count to the festival of Shavuot, or also known in Greek as Pentecost. Now, the Pharisees and the Sadducees disagreed about the correct day for the barley ritual. The Pharisees maintained that, quote, the day after the Sabbath, Leviticus 23:11, referred to Nisan 16, the day following the Yom Tov of the festival of Passover. The Pharisees explained that the Torah referred to the Yom Tov as the Sabbath because it was a specific festival day with Sabbath work restrictions. The Sadducees maintained that the day after the Sabbath referred to the day after the first Saturday, or the weekly Sabbath, that fell during the week Passover. In their opinion, the day for offering the barley sheaf always fell on a Sunday. Now, the Pharisees had the upper hand, though, because they had the popular support of the people. In the days of the apostles, the day after the Sabbath meant Nisan 16. During the days of the apostles, the Jewish people followed the Pharisaic interpretation of Leviticus 23:11, interpreting, quote, the day after the Sabbath as the day after Yom Tov. Evidence from Josephus, Philo, and the Septuagint confirms this reading. Quote, on the second day of unleavened bread, which is the 16th day of the month, or Nisan, they first partake of the fruits of the earth, for before that day they do not touch them. They also, at this participation of the first fruits of the earth, sacrifice a lamb as a burnt offering. That comes from Josephus. Now, this quote here comes from Philo. Philo says, there is also a festival on the day of the Passover feast, which succeeds the first day, and this is named the sheaf or Omer, from what takes place on it. For the sheaf is brought to the altar as a first fruit. And then finally, from Leviticus 23:11, from the Septuagint, and he shall lift it up before the Lord to be accepted for you on the day after the first day, the priest shall lift it up. Now, in that particular year, though, both opinions coincide. Nisan 16, the correct day, according to Pharisaic opinion, fell on a Sunday, the correct weekday, according to the Sadducee opinion. By maybe divine design, who knows, the ritual of the offering the first fruits of the barley Omer in the temple coincide with the resurrection of the Messiah, according to both opinions. The day of his resurrection began the 50-day count to Pentecost. Now, on the day when you wave your sheaf, you shall offer a male lamb 1 year old without defect, or from a burnt offering to the Lord. Leviticus 23:12. The command to offer a single male lamb as a burnt offering is unique to the day of the barley offering. All the other sacrifices prescribed for the appointed times occur in multiples. Perhaps the single lamb offered as a sacrifice to rise before God symbolizes the Messiah, who on that day rose up from the grave. Now, according to Matthew 28:1, Yeshua rose, quote, after the Sabbath as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, a Hebraic expression for the Havdalah hour that ends the Sabbath on Saturday night. It is a remarkable display of God's sovereign planning. The Torah set aside the day of Yeshua's resurrection as a day of first fruits, 1400 years before it actually happened. Just as the priesthood brought the first omer of barley as a first fruit of the whole harvest, Messiah's resurrection became a token of the first fruits of the resurrection of the dead. Paul himself invoked the festival imagery with these words, quote, Messiah has been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who are asleep. 1 Corinthians 15:20. Like the first fruits of the barley, which made the rest of the harvest kosher, the resurrection of Messiah makes resurrection of the dead possible. And that is the first fruits, as we normally call it, the first Omer. The symbol behind all of this of Messiah rising up, the comparisons between the lamb. These are all shadows of things to come. This is what Paul was talking about. When Paul reread the Torah after those years, as it says, I believe in Galatians chapter 1, verse 8, he had a better understanding of the Torah. Now that he encountered Yeshua, he was able to see Yeshua throughout all the writings. That's why someone like Moses is here. I hope you are enjoying this series. Please like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Shalom.